welcome to the Comic Coach podcast with me, Em Stroud. Indeed, I am the Comic Coach, and we are here as ever to chat to some amazing human beings all about the wonderful world of impact and, of course, how they've ended up being who they are and what they're doing. And lovely listeners and viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, let me just tell you, you are in for a treat. Now, admittedly, it does look like she's sitting in a box. That is because she is sitting in one of those very professional meeting room boxes. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, good listeners of the Comic Coach podcast, please put your hands together for the fabulous Abigail. I'm clapping. How are you, lovely soul? And thank you for coming on the pod.
I am really good, thank you, today. And thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Now, all of my regular listeners and subscribers always like to know, where in the world are you? So today I felt like singing that. So where in the world are you?
Today I'm in Clerkenwell, and usually I'm in London. That's where I'm based.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad that you added that, because knowing that I've got listeners all around the world, they'll be like, Clerkenwell means nothing. It's a very cool bit of London. That's all we need to know, is that Abigail is sitting in a cool bit of London, which is a good thing, you know. Are you a Londoner? Is London your...
I was born in London, grew up in Hertfordshire, and then moved back to London when I moved out of home at 19 and have been in London ever since. I've travelled a lot, but I've never lived anywhere else. I love London. I really do.
Yeah, me too. It's just an awesome city, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, and somehow it works.
Yes.
You know,
most of the time.
I love the fact that we're both Londoners. We're both like, most of the time. Let's just add a caveat. You know, if it's too hot or too cold, we don't do very well. But apart from that, if it's grey and drizzly, we excel at that in London. We're very good at grey and drizzly, you know, which is always good.
But I actually do love London when the sun is shining, because everyone is in such a good mood. Everyone chats to you. There's people on the streets. It's a different vibe.
Oh my word. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, and you can literally, it's like that thing, it's like, feel the sunshine, you know, and you literally, it's like, as a Londoner, it's like, everybody does feel the sunshine, and we're all like, yeah, this is amazing. And we just sort of all walk around, and suddenly Londoners are smiling and looking each other in the eye and saying, hello, what? Not that far. Obviously, we don't talk to each other on the tube, because that would, you come across as weird. So we don't do that. But you're right, the London energy in sunshine and summer is a very specific and very joyful energy.
Yeah.
So as we record this in June, how is it June? Abigail, how is it June?
I know. I don't know. It's literally gone like that.
I know. I just did a post today all about, and we were chatting about this before we started recording, I just did a post about June and the fact that everything was feeling quite fast for me. And actually I'm on this whole June reset, because it's mid-year. And actually, it's just that thing of going, let me just check in. How am I doing? What's going on? And it feels like quite a gift to see June as a potential moment to take a breath, rather than January. Start of new year. Must do this, must do that. And actually, it feels quite nice. So, yeah. Anyhow. Now, all of my lovely listeners, they will know that I love talking about impact and play and all of these things. And I have a series of questions that I ask all of my brilliant, fabulous guests. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I love that. And if you weren't watching it, she pushed her beautifully stylish glasses up. She's like, yes, I'm now seeing clearly. I can do this. So, question number 1. Who has had the greatest impact on your life?
So I've chosen my mother. Because my mum went out to work, and my dad brought my sister and I up, which was quite unusual in the 70s. And so I've just had the honor of having a really incredible female role model who has not taken any shit and has really paved the way for me to see I can do anything I want to do. And she has also she's a real feminist. And she kind of piled loads of books, feminist literature on me really young. And it was the, kind of hardcore 70s feminist literature as well. So that opened my eyes to a lot of different ways of thinking. But then I also do have to mention my dad, because he is the most gentle, open-hearted, incredible man as well. So the two of them have got this great relationship. But I, having a mother like that who, was working in the film industry and was away a lot, but just kick ass basically. And it really did show both my sister and I, that we shouldn't settle for anything, and that we can basically carve our way in the world. And I feel really, really privileged to have had that in my mum.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, big shout out to your mum, because as you say, in the 70s, that was really not the norm in any way, shape, or form. But also really big shout out to your dad, because that was really not the norm for masculine men to be masculine men, that common phrase. And I remember, like, when my son was quite little, one of our really good friends was a stay-at-home dad, and he was the only dad in our group of parents. And he said, that there was still quite a lot of sexism towards him. And so if that's what, 13, 14 years ago, what your dad must have faced, whether outward or just an inward sort of, it's a big kudos to both of them, that they were like, no, this is what we want to do. This is what's going to make us happy. And created two awesome daughters who, have gone off to do all of the cool stuff that you've done, right?
Totally. And you're right. I mean, he was the ballet dad, so he could plait our hair. He did all the washing, cleaning, ironing, everything. And those traditional kind of roles, which have evolved so much today. Are there any even traditional roles anymore? I don't know, but it definitely opened our eyes. Well, we did actually, to say that, we probably didn't even realize at the time. We didn't know we were any different. But it's just, as soon as we did kind of realize, and he did get fawned over by all the ballet mums.
You know how to do a plait. Yeah, we love you.
Exactly, that they knew how to plait.
And it's so interesting as well, because you go through your childhood and you just assume that what you are living is the norm, right? And I've spoken about it on the pod before, but I'm very grateful that my dad was an entrepreneur, and so he showed me that you could do things from a different way. You didn't have to go to work. So he was working from home well before you were WFH, and this is before the internet, and so when you think about it, it's like he ran various businesses on a phone and with books, and you just sort of think back, and it's not that long ago. I'm not that old. And it's like, holy moly. And so much was done with a handshake. I remember the time when a fax machine came in, and it was like, what is this world? Whereas now, and if you're under the age of 30, just Google what a fax machine is. You're just like, what, and but again, it's that role modeling, but he wasn't doing it to be a role model. He was doing it, that's who he was. And I think that's really important, because I think we can feel when people are doing it because it's right, rather than just trying to prove something,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely agree. And we did miss her. I do remember missing her a lot. But again, we didn't kind of feel that we were missing out on anything. And we got to travel the world as well, because they used to pay for the family to come and visit when they were on location. And so we ended up going to Africa for 8 weeks during the summer, and like all these incredible trips that we had as a family. So,
I mean, amazing. Big shout out to your mum. Question number 2. What keeps you motivated in what you do?
What keeps me motivated in what I do are the HR. It's the HR community that I've started, which was about almost 2 years ago now, that I started wanting to host groups of HR people to just ask them how they are, because we've been through such a lot as an entire human race in the last 5 or 6 years. But for HR people, it's been particularly tough to navigate through all the different changes that have happened and come into our roles around mental health, around inclusion, pushing agendas that, always needed to be pushed, but now are kind of much more in your face, and kind of all these divergent needs that came to the surface. On hosting these kind of groups, I realized that we're not okay really as a profession, and no one is really asking HR people if they're okay and how they're looking after themselves. So that's what's fueled my passion, really, to want to put back into the profession that I've spent the last 25 years in. And that's what really motivates me, is hearing from them and the questions that they ask me and the things that they want to know, and how collectively it's shown me how a real community does give you that sense of belonging that I think I was searching for and didn't realize. And seeing it in real time, especially when we come together in person. I think the word community is thrown around quite a lot, and I love the word community. It's very open. But this I'm seeing as a real community, because we're kind of there for each other. And in this group, you can kind of take off your work masks and all the shiny bits and just really talk about what it's like to work in HR, and how do we actually go through these things and make ourselves feel, more resilient and more able to do the jobs that we need to do and push the agendas we need to push.
And I think when we first met, that was one of the reasons that I wanted you to come on the podcast, because, obviously I've worked with lots and lots of organizations, and I've worked directly with lots of HR people to help them with those business needs and challenges. And I'm always amazed that when I ask people, how are you? You can almost see there's like a question of like, no one's asked me that. Because the thing is, within HR, you're the human resources professionals, you know what you're doing. Yes. And actually quite often you are holding, challenging people at their worst times, sometimes the best times as well, it's the flip side. But quite often you get to see the not such brilliant sides of humanity. Yes. And actually that does have an impact. If you're having to put through a whole load of redundancies, where do you go, excuse me, when you're, where do you go to then go, this is okay and I'm okay? And I think what you've created with the community there is so important, because in essence, as you say, you can get each other, take the mask off and go, oh yeah, that's been quite hard. Have a bit of a, this is what's been going on, then have a giggle, have a glass of wine, coffee, water, whatever is your drink of choice, and then go back. And I think it's so magic what you're doing. So it doesn't surprise me that that keeps you motivated, because you see and you feel and you hear the connection, right? Yes. And that's the beauty of the community that you've created. It's almost like you know what you're doing. Oh, you know. Question number 3, which is an interesting one on the back end of thinking about stuff that's hard. How do you play?
Oh, it is a difficult one for me. I think it's a bit emotional as well, because I don't play enough, that is for sure. And I don't even really know what I consider to be play anymore. And I've been thinking about it quite a bit, and just I feel like play has to be done for play's sake, and no end gain and no objective in it, just playing. And so I do that very rarely. But then I maybe need to think about what does play actually mean to me, because there are things
you're talking to the right person.
Okay.
It is, you're never going to believe this, but literally this morning, so I, as part of my second book, have done some research into what are the ways that adults play. Mm-hmm. And I've identified that there's 12 ways that adults play. And, and I've been sharing this in various talks. It's going to be in my second book. But I think tomorrow, every day for the next 12 days, there will be a video on all my social media channels going, this is how we play. So maybe just watch those 12 and you go, actually, Em, I do play more than I thought.
Okay, that would be good.
Yeah, because genuinely, so many people are in the same position as you, and they go, play, and I'm not even sure what it is, which was one of the reasons that, and I built on an academic model created by a play psychiatrist, that I was like, actually, if we don't know what play looks like, feels like, and sounds like as an adult, we're going to find it hard to do it. And for me, play is any activity that we're fully present in that brings us joy.
Right.
And as soon as people start to go, oh, okay, and then it could be that you're the comic, it could be that you're a maker, it could be that you're a spectator. There's 12 different ways. So there you go. You can now watch those, and then at the end, you can then come back and comment on this podcast and go, I've now learned, actually, I do play more than I thought I did.
I shall definitely be doing that. I will definitely be doing that.
But you're right. And I think it's really interesting that within the community that you've set up, and then for yourself, you're aware that you perhaps don't play as much as you want.
Yeah.
And actually, so many people in your world are exactly the same, because play doesn't take away any of the challenges, any of the harshness that is world of work in the world of world. But actually what it does is, for that period of time when we're doing it, we feel better.
Yes.
And that's why play is so magical. So
I do know what those things are, I think. A couple of those things, yeah.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
yeah, which is dancing, which I don't do enough of. Dancing.
Okay, so that would be a mover.
Right. And art. So
you are a mover and a maker.
Right. Mover and a maker.
She's a mover and a maker, everybody. She's a mover and a maker. But the thing is that because if you know that dance fuels your soul,
Yes.
then, and there isn't one adult that I've come across, unless they are someone like me that prioritizes play because it's what I do, that doesn't have to consciously put it into their diary to make it happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's the thing of like, oh, I'll do that when I've got time.
Yeah.
I'll do that later. And actually, it's the thing that can fuel us for the rest of the world. So yeah. Question number 4. What's one action that you've taken that's really impacted your life?
So I'm going to choose my motherhood journey here, which is brave because I haven't been able to have a child of my own, and I have been trying in different ways to have a child of my own for the last 2.5 decades. But more recently, and I'm still on that journey now, and it feels brave because it's a choice that I'm making, and there's so many steps which we don't have time to go into now on the different, options that are available. But I've been working really hard in the last 5 years on just expanding what motherhood actually means to me, and how many people I mother sounds wrong, but how motherly I can be in many different ways, in many different spaces. And then also just how many things I've birthed. And this community would definitely be one of those things. And so I'm kind of expanding my archetype of mother. And that feels really, it just feels really good inside and really helpful to me. But I do, when I look back on all the years and choices and I guess what I've gone through, I do really consider it as something brave and something that I'm now able to speak about a bit more, because it's not quite as painful. And also, I'd like to share it a bit more because I think there's so many people that are potentially going through different, avenues of motherhood, that I might be able to help in some way. I'm probably not there yet in terms of helping others, but even just by saying it out, it just releases something good into the world.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I think as you said that, my whole body just went, I hear how shifting the frame and the framework and the way that you're thinking about the word mother has now landed within you. Because I think mother is so much bigger than just a child of self, and I think the fact that you speak so eloquently about it, but also I think you are right. There is a lot of women who, for many, many reasons, the word mother is very complicated. And even people that aren't mothers, the word mother can be very complicated because of their own relationship with mothering and motherhood and their own mothers. And so expanding it to go, in the most beautiful way of actually it's bigger. And you kind of think about it just in the context of Mother Nature.
Yeah.
It's like we are all birthing various different babies, different things, different creations. And as you say, it's not only how we mother our children, it's how do we mother each other, ourselves, and all of that piece. But as you say, the making that conscious decision, as I hear it, for you to find the kindness and then find your truth within this, I massively applaud. And no wonder that has impacted you. And of course, all of the challenges, all the tribulations, all of the heartache that no doubt you've gone through, and the grieves and the ups and downs, to get to this place. I know that to say those few sentences to me is something that's probably taken about 20 years to get to. And so, I in no way underestimate how long a journey it's taking to get there, but what a gift to the world. And I wonder, I'm going to be very curious to see how that frames a lot more of your work and frames a lot more about where you as Abigail goes next. So thank you. Truly beautiful. And how do you take care of yourself?
I'm much better at taking care of myself since I've come out of the corporate world, I've noticed.
Well, not the first person to say that on the pod. I don't think you'll be the last.
Right. I'm really prioritizing my health at the moment, and it just does feel so good. So if I want to eat cake all weekend, which I just have at my nephew's birthday, it is still okay, and it feels good. So yeah, I'm prioritizing sport and movement a lot more than I ever have, which feels great. I do meditate as well. I'm kind of just getting to know myself, which 50's definitely done that for me. I want to make sure that I am spending my next few decades doing things that really do fill me up and that provide more meaning in my life. And that includes all different circles, actually, of friendships and, work relationships and all areas of my life. And that feels also very caring. That feels very much about self-love and self-respect. And I notice in HR that there are a lot of people pleasers, myself included. And so boundaries has always been something that I've found difficult, or I think, yes, I've set some boundaries now, and then 2 weeks later I'm like, oh no. So I realize boundaries is also a continuum. You need to keep checking in on them, and that's something that I remind myself to do. But I just know what I need more these days. I can hear myself more loudly since I've come out of the corporate world, and I think that's been an ongoing process for, again, quite a few years of healing journey. And sleep. I'm just prioritizing sleep as well.
Oh, I so hear you. The wonders of sleep. I can't remember what it was, but it was maybe about 3-4 weeks ago. But I had a night where I really didn't sleep, and I was like, "Why do I feel so dreadful all day?" Like walking around, being like, "Must be okay." And I was like, "Oh, that's right. Didn't have any sleep." And we're not meant to function on no sleep. And I know, there's been various famous people that have got, I can cope on 4 hours sleep. Believe for you, well done. I can't. I don't want to. I'm not nice. I don't like. But it's just that thing. And, in order to make good decisions, if I'm not rested, I know that my decision-making process is not so good.
Yeah.
And I think we also feel things. I remember I learned this from a friend of mine that went through AA, and it's one of those phrases that's always stayed with me. It's like, don't make any decision and just take a moment and halt. And the phrase is HALT. So if you're feeling like, oh, I should make a decision, and just check in. And it's, if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, you are not going to be making a good decision. And that was one of the biggest gifts anybody has ever shared with me, because if I'm hungry, I'm like, just do that. Or I'll say, oh yeah, of course I can do that. Quick, get it done. And it's like, no, actually, you were just hungry. If you'd taken a beat, you'd have been like, can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think especially with tiredness, it's that thing of going, you know what, I'm quite knackered, so perhaps this isn't the right time to check a contract or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Obviously for you, because you're in HR, contracts are your bread and butter, but for me, I go, I don't like it. You're like, bish, bash, bosh, contract, easy.
It's one of the thing that when you do slow down, as I have a little bit, not that much, but a little bit, is that you also notice when you're kind of off the rails. Like for me, it's Netflix and ice cream, or if I'm like online shopping too much, or I'm doing things which I know are just distraction or numbing techniques. And perhaps before I just didn't notice them because I was just on to the next day, and in a kind of more of a hamster wheel kind of life. which isn't to say that all corporate life is like that. It's just that was what it was like for me. But yeah, I think I can notice things in myself a lot more, and that's good because it means
and that's
something.
And that's the key thing, right? You can take care of yourself. And just like you said, you know, if you want to have a night and have loads of cake, or a weekend have loads of cake, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I remember I went out and like my old drinking head came, like I don't drink that much anymore, but my old drinking head of being a student came out to play, and it was like, you can get out, have another couple of drinks, Em, you're having a great time. And the following day, I did not feel like I was having a great time. And then I felt that thing that I think we've all felt, you know, deep shame. And I went into that awful, like, I should never do this. And I happened to have a session of therapy that day. And I was just, I feel dreadful because, you know, I drank and I da-da-da-da-da. And she just said to me, maybe that's just what you needed.
Yeah.
Maybe that's okay, because that used to make you feel better. And maybe, she's like, different, if you were doing it every day or every week, I wouldn't be saying this. But maybe you just needed to do that. And maybe that's okay. But actually, it's the thing that I'm more concerned about is how you're talking to yourself now. Yeah. And I notice with so many people that I've worked with, doing the do is one choice, but it's then how do we speak to each other, ourselves afterwards. Yes. And for me, that's as important about taking care of ourselves, of going, oh yeah, I noticed I did that. Was I? That's because I just felt like it. That's okay. Yeah. Or you just check in and go, haven't been doing my writing so much in the mornings. Why is that? Haven't felt like it. Oh, okay. You know, it's just that beat, right? It's just that beat of just taking care.
Just be a bit kinder too.
Be a bit kinder. I love that. And then the final on the question marks. The final on the questions. There's no question marks. No question marks at all. No grammar here at all. It's just a podcast. We're just talking. What have you been thinking about in the last couple of days? What's been in your beautiful, brilliant mind?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about and sort of dreaming about, I do like to think long term about what is my future dream plan for People Flow. And one of the things that I'm dreaming about at the moment is hosting retreats for burnt out HR people and doing it in a chateau in France somewhere. And so I am going to France for a holiday, and we're going to go on a driving holiday around France. And so I'm going to be looking out for some chateaux. So I've been thinking about that, and it's definitely bringing me joy to just dream and imagine the sound healing room and the fields and the trees and the chateau itself, obviously. So that's been one thing. I sort of, it's a mixed bag, I would say. I've also been very much trying to shut out as much of the noise that's going on in the world as possible, but at the same time wanting to make sure I'm staying on top of things so that I know what's going on as well, which is a very fine balance. And so the last few days, I have been thinking about what that actually looks like, as in, do not doom scroll in the morning first thing looking at the news, for sure. I've stopped doing that. But then how can I stay current and just know what's going on, but just the bits that, you know, will allow me to have a good conversation that aren't going to you know, make me feel overwhelmed and like I can't cope with what's going on. And you know, I guess everyone is trying to deal with that in some way, particularly around politics and generally, but also misogyny and you know, those sort of topics that are
those big things of life. Yeah, just politics and misogyny and other such things that we have to handle and deal with. Yeah, no, and I so hear you, and I think it's a really interesting piece, isn't it, about how do we navigate the news and want to be, you know, not look like we have completely put our head in the sand, but in the same way, not be so bombarded with information. And I've in no way sort of perfected it, but one of the things that I've noticed is if I allow myself to read things once a week that have been thought through and considered. So I've started subscribing to This Week, and you know, other publications are of course available, but it's that thing of because it comes out once a week, there's been some thought They've
Yeah.
collected some arguments rather than just this ridiculous constant news cycle. And, I also listen to somebody that makes me laugh in the morning as opposed to let me fill my head up with how bad humanity is. And they just have a 2-minute headline. And with that, I feel like I already know. And I think, it's that piece of, finding our own peace so that you can know. Because, when you think about it, I remember going and seeing a talk once, and he asked how many people listen to people talking about the news first thing in the morning. He's like, so in your first hour and a half of your day, when your brain is at its freshest, you are listening to people talking about things that you have no control over.
Yeah.
And actually, all you need is the headlines. And let's face it, if something's that bad, you are going to hear about it in one way or another because we're too connected anyway. And it really stayed with me. It's like, actually, I don't need to hear people, expanding on their own opinion about whether Ukraine has just done a great, sort of strike on Russia or not for the next 25 minutes. It's that piece of going, how do we find our own peace? And what can we be in charge of? So it is something that I definitely think about too. It's like, where am I getting my information from? But also, how often am I accessing it?
Yes. And can I protect my morning time? Because I realize I'm a morning person. That only happens quite recently. Is when I stopped drinking, to excess, I realized, because I always thought I was a nighttime person. Actually, no, I'm a morning person. And the joy that you can find in the morning is so precious, because your mind is more, I don't know, it's more from the moment you wake up, that first hour and a half, as you said, there's something very sensitive about.
Precious is the right word. I completely agree. And it's my missus always says, it's that's when you can access your top brain. So last week was my regular listeners will know that I always have 1 week every month, which is my creative week. So I'm either writing my book or my show or just doing podcasts, but it's all about creativity and nothing to do with my businesses, right? And it's so interesting because on one of those days, something came into my world quite early on in the morning, which completely threw me off my sitting and my writing. And then I thought about it, and it was a personal thing, it wasn't a work thing. And then I was like, it was 11:30, and then getting into my zone didn't really happen for the rest of the day. Whereas for the rest of the week, I rewrote my show. I'm just re-editing my book proposal and stuff. But as long as I started at sort of 8:30, so I'd have my bit of time, do my exercise, do my meditation, all that sort of stuff. And it's that thing of like, because then my brain's in that space. But again, it's holding the sanctuary of creating that space for myself rather than being bamboozled by what lots of other people want from me. And like you, I'm a bit of a people pleaser. Getting better.
I think being a people pleaser is actually a beautiful thing as well. It's just not to your own detriment, or and that's sometimes where I struggle. And then I can see it in hindsight. Oh no, actually that took. So now I'm just trying to notice it sooner when I'm putting myself out too much. And a detriment to me. But it is a joy not waking up with 1,000 emails to deal with.
I could only imagine, as somebody that's never worked for a corporate, I remember there was one particular gig I was doing, and the company shall remain nameless, and I was coming in to be their keynote speaker, right? And it was a big conference, everything else like that. Somehow, I do not know how, my email ended up being part of the events trail of this thing, right? And I am not joking. I looked at my inbox after not being, I think I was recording a podcast and looked, I'd had the call, had the briefing, everything was fine. Suddenly I had 712 emails and I was like, what is this? And it was all of these different people because it was a very big event, I'll give it credit, but it was maybe 20, 25 people all emailing each other, but copying each other in because obviously everybody had to, and I was like, oh, this is how it happens. This is how it happens. And I just was like, I can just go delete all of them. But for those people, there might be one email that's actually pertinent to their job. And I was like, holy moly. So yes, I hear you with that. I hear you with that. Abigail, I could talk to you for hours, but I'm, of course, aware of your time, of course, my good listeners' time. How do people, especially people in the beautiful world of HR, how do people find you and your brilliant work? Where should they go?
So LinkedIn is the best place, Abigail Wilmore. And then also my website, which is wearepeopleflow.com.
I will make sure that both of those are in the show notes and everything else like that. I knew it was going to be a joy. Thank you so much for coming on the Comic Coach podcast. You are awesome human. Carry on doing all your awesomeness. And I look forward to chatting more. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
How much did you love her? I honestly could have talked to her for hours, and so much of what she said resonated with me. And I really hope that it did with you too. But I think the piece that genuinely got my heart was how she talked about the motherhood piece and being a mother. And I think there's so much bravery to talk about our different experiences of being a mother, of not being able to be a mother in the traditional sense, what motherhood and mothering really means. And I think the way she spoke about it, I think was both eloquent and brave and poignant. And I wonder where that has led you to think about how do you mother yourself? You know, one of the things that I often explore is this whole idea about how do I mother the younger parts of M? I'm not doing too bad a job mothering my actual child, but I catch myself quite often not being quite so kind to myself. And it's sometimes only when challenged by my therapist, to be truthful, and when she says, well, how would you feel about that towards your son, that I can see how my mothering of others sometimes is not always to such a same degree of myself. And that's something I'm still working on, which I think will be a lifetime of practice, which I'm sure is probably the case for all of us. And so, yeah, if you're in HR in particular, I know I've got a lot of people that are in HR, do check out Abigail's work. She's doing some really cool stuff and her community is awesome. And yeah, as you can tell, she's a really cool soul. So do check out all of her different things that she's doing and get involved, because we all need community. And if you are part of that HR world that is so good at looking after each other, looking after others, it's really important that you also have a space to go and be held and be looked after and supported. And as she said so beautifully, be part of community. So there we go. Another episode of the Comic Coach podcast with me, Anne Stroud. Indeed, I am the Comic Coach, and so therefore it's my podcast. So yeah, this week, make sure that you do find some time to laugh and think with kindness and play, because you know that's going to help you have more impact in the world. And also, you'll just feel better, which is also beautiful. Thanks for joining me. If you have liked it, do like, subscribe, do all those good things. And I look forward to catching up with you next week. Thanks for listening and watching. That's me ending it. Take care. Bye.